Hi everyone, my name is Sukanya Sharma. I'm from New Delhi, India. I have done my 5 years bachelor's in architecture from School of Built Environment and Design, Lingias University. I have been working from past few years in conservation of heritage structures and in different region of India. So today's theme that I'll be discussing with you will be totally on built vernacular heritage, urban architecture and interpretation of rural internal design. I'll be I'll be purely focusing on understanding the vernacular traditions and on basis of that I'll be presenting a case study that I conducted in a small village that can also be called as Dhani of no, the village name is Deomali village in Rajasthan, state of India. I'll be focusing on the culture and traditions of Deomali village through this video. So let's start. For the basically vernacular traditions are associated with the building practices, local wisdom, and traditional knowledge passed down from generations to generations, particularly to create an energy efficient and sustainable architecture using locally available building materials. Vernacular architecture has also evolved over centuries to reflect the effective surroundings, cultural, and built vernacular heritage consisting of similar dwellings, public spaces, and settlement. It is important to understand that vernacular heritage incorporates tangible as well as intangible aspects such as architecture style, techniques, lifestyle, materials used, and imparting of expertise from one generation to the next through an effective channel. In a world's increasing population and house needs, we need an economically and culturally viable methods. This raises a thought that happens to legitimacy and ethics when the skill gradually disappears. The local abundance or the materials exhaust or no more effective due to climate change. There are indeed many things that can be learned from vernacular architecture in this aspect. Let's move on to the Venice Charter that was formed in 1964, which was adopted by ICMOS in 1965. Imbued with the message from the past, the historical monuments of generation of people remain to the present day as living witnesses of the age-old tradition. People are becoming more and more conscious of the unity of human values and regard ancient monuments as a common heritage. The common responsibility to safeguard that for future generation is recognized. It is our duty to hand them on in the full richness of their authenticity. The Charter states in its Article 5 and the conservation of monuments is always facilitated by making use of them for some socially useful purpose. Such use is therefore desirable, but it must not change the layout or decoration of the building. It is within these limits only that modifications demanded by a change of function should be envisaged and may be permitted. It simplifies that authenticity of original fabric of settlement needs to be kept intact with minor modifications according to the exceptional requirements of the living community. Along the same lines, the Article 6 states that the conservation of a monument implies preserving of settlement which is not out of scale. Wherever the tradition setting exists, it must be kept. No new construction, demolition, or modification which would alter the relations of mass and color must be allowed. It is necessary to preserve the existing traditional settings to be passed on to the next generation. This can be made possible with the awareness programs and proper education and training. As per the ICOMOS Charter on Built Vernacular Heritage, so 1999 in Mexico, vernacular building is the traditional and natural way by which communities house themselves. It is a continuing process including necessary changes and continuous adaptation as a response to social and economical constraints. The survival of this tradition is threatened worldwide by the forces of economic, cultural, and architectural homogenization. How these forces can be met is a fundamental problem. that must be addressed by communities and also by governments, planners, architects, conservationists, and by a multidisciplinary group of specialists. According to this document, the vernacular may be recognized by a manner of building shared by the community, by a recognizable local or regional character sensitive to the environment, by coherence of style, form, and appearance, or by the use of traditionally established building types, by traditional expertise in design and construction, which is transmitted informally by an effective response to functional, social, and environmental constraints, or by the effective application of traditional construction systems and crafts. The Charter suggests through its principle to involve the people associated with vernacular communities and encourage for their continuing use and maintenance. In a sense, these principles are in line with Kingston W. Hill's 2001 concept of cultural weathering, as they allow dwellers to shape and change their built environment according to their needs. The Charter further mentions that the built vernacular heritage is an integral part of the cultural landscape, and this land relationship must be taken into consideration in the development of conservation approaches. In other views, this would only result in modifying the landscape, which will no longer be economically viable, or in converting it into a museum. Moreover, Charter focuses on maintaining preserving groups and settlements of our representative character region by region. This clearly recommends to maintain the legitimacy and ethics of the traditional building systems and skills. The Charter recommends to preserve the culture, catalogued, and all the skills are passed on to future generations through proper direction and channel and guidance. Their pragmatic approach is based on the fact that it would be possible to use rigid conservation standards in preserving the basic character of an evolving cultural landscape, because Professor Pierre Larouche, 2006, has noted living communities are constantly making changes to their built environment. Coming on to the principles, guidelines in principle, um, uh, the research and documentation is the first part of the guidelines and in principle, which is already mentioned on the Charter on built vernacular heritage. I have attached a link also to the whole document, so you can go there and just read the document, stating all the six, seven points. So the first one is research and documentation. Proper research and documentation is required to maintain the traditional setting. Second is citing landscape and group of buildings. Third is traditional building systems. Fourth is replacement of materials and parts. Fifth is adaptation. Sixth is changes and period restoration. And seventh one is training to the people for the basic understanding of the vernacular traditions and vernacular architecture taking place in that area. So, coming on to this slide, here we can see the cave shrine of Sri Dev Narayan Ji Mandir in Deomali village, Tehsil Masuda district, Ajmer, Rajasthan, India. This is the case study done by me in the Rajasthan state. So, Deomali is a medium-sized village located in Masuda Tehsil of Ajmer district, Rajasthan, with total 290 families residing. The Deomali village has population of 1205, of which 607 are males, while 598 are female as per population census 2011. So, as per Constitution of India and Panchayati Raj Act, Deomali village is administered by Sarpanch, head of village, who is elected representative of village. Um, Moreover, there is a school also and a hospital also in Deomali village. School is till 10th standard, and people send their kids to the nearby school. And moreover, the first thing you notice about the Devmali village is a village in Ajmer district of Rajasthan is everyone lives in houses made of mud using cement and bricks. Local residents explain both anger their local deity, Dev Narayan, and bring bad luck. Only he deserves a concrete temple. They don't make their houses in concrete. Only they have done their deity place in concrete. And this is the entrance to the village, and on the right hand side you can see the Aravali Range mountains, and this is the approaching road in the extreme right, approaching road to the Shri Dev Narayanji Mandir. So I met a person named Bhopaji, and he told me we are all priests of Dev Narayan. He lives in a cemented abode. We stay in kacha mud houses. We cannot be equals. I met him for the first time during the survey of the village. A couple of residents once defied the custom, and he also stated that a couple of residents once defied the custom and built pakka concrete houses but had to demolish them after critical illnesses befell their households. And after they put up kacha structures, everyone recovered out of it. So village has lived in mud houses for more than 1000 years. This is a village of medieval times since Dev Narayan visited the area and built his temple beneath seven large boulders. So this is the stone carved stone I found in the temple precinct. So it is written, श्री देव नारायण भगवान का आस्थान गांव देवमली चिड़िया चोंच भर ले गई नदी न घटियो नीर दान देने पर घन न घटे कह गए श्री देव नारायण भगवान. So, the legend is that Devnarayan, an incarnation of the Hindu god Vishnu, was born in Bhilwara district of Rajasthan in 911 AD to Sadhu Mata and Savai Bhoj, one of the 24 sons of Bhagji Gujar, a man who, according to an epic, had a lion's head. Along with his cousins, Devnarayan avenged the killing of his father and uncles by a chieftain of Ran city. Devnarayan built the Sanctum Sanctorum here. This is the whole cave shrine that is, and people offer cow dung cakes on the shrine, and the villagers have only recovered it under a building, which pouring ghee onto a flame that is lying next to an upright row of large bricks. So there are several shrines made by the the deity himself, and Devnarayan is mainly worshipped in the form of the bricks covered with multicolored tinsel. In some places, he is also depicting riding a horse. So all of the agriculture and residential land that is land within the boundary of Devmali is registered in the name of Sri Dev Narayanji. Since no land is registered in their individual names, they cannot even seek home loans or from banks. Even the sale and purchase of property here is only an exchange of statements made on stamp papers. This was explained to me by a local resident, and this was the only problem they have in this area, because they have devoted all the land, everything, every property of they had to the Lord Himself. And so for various things that a person requires, a proof, address proof, and everything, the documents required, so they don't have any land papers. So it is a problem for them. So though his house contains all the other necessities of life, the local I talked to, his house contained all the necessities of life: a refrigerator, fans, cupboards, cooking gas, and windows with grills. Its walls are covered with mud, and the floor, as it can also be seen here, there is an electricity meter, and electricity is also available in the village. They have proper supply of water, and moreover they have all the facilities and but they it's the architecture is basically of sustainable and effective, made out of local available materials. So the walls are covered with mud and the floor has been covered with a paste of soil and cow dung. Its roof, like the roof of other houses in the village, is made up of interlocking clay tiles placed on bamboo poles. These clay tiles are manufactured in the village itself. It is said that nothing goes out of this village. No material used in the any material used in the construction of the village houses. So the material doesn't go out of this village, because if the material goes out of the, it is the belief that if the material goes out of this village, it would bring them bad luck, and if it goes out, it eventually returns to the its only location. So besides not using cement and bricks in construction, the villagers religiously eschew kerosene, oil, liquor, and non-vegetarian food. These three are believed in incur the wrath of Sri Dev Narayanji. If a drunkard ever visits the temple, bees from the beehives above the doorway sting him, asserts the priest, pointing to a beehive that I saw in the temple area where the shrines were kept, and there is one more on the conical hill. So um, the village has rarely reported a trouble. If we see in this um, slide, so mostly the buildings are made up of mud, and all the buildings are made out of all these materials in the village, and only few buildings. One is the dormitories with the temple. It is known as dharamshala also. These dharamshala or stay stays for tourists or the people who come on pilgrimage from various parts of India. They stay there. So those rooms, those dormitories are made in concrete. Temple is concretized, and basically the inside the village there is one more space where panchayat helps. Panchayat bhavan, it is known as panchayat bhavan. It's a council building where all the decisions related to the village happens and takes place. So it is also concretized. So even the shops surrounding the Devmali uh, Dev Narayanji's mandir, it is also is built in concrete, and there is a storage area made in middle of the village. That storage area is also made in concrete. Only these few buildings, two or three buildings, I can recall that are made in concrete. So since Devnarayan has an influence over large part of Rajasthan, northern and central India, the Devnarayan temple, Sri Devnarayanji temple in Devmali, gets a larger number of visitors from various parts of the country. It also receives hefty donations. Nemali is connected to Ajmer by a road that is not in good repair. There are no bus or railway links. Children who wish to obtain higher education have to drive motorbikes to Byawar and Masuda, towns located near the village. Over the years, many families from the village, particularly those whose members have obtained state governments, have migrated to the nearby places, that is Ajmer, Jaipur, or any other districts near to them. So coming to the previous slide, if we see all the courtyards also, internal open spaces, become another thematic element in all scales of domestic architecture. From small urban houses to large mansions and palaces, courtyard became the key organizational elements responding to climatic condition as well as the cultural needs of communities. This private internal open space has also acquired special significance while serving various levels of privacy, a wide range of household activities. As you can also see, courtyard Adjacent to the courtyard there is a cattle shed, and then there's a kitchen also in the pavilions surrounding the courtyards. In the both the in both the dwellings it is same or similar, you can say. So the private open space also quite special significance while serving various level of privacy. Wide range of household activities could extend into courtyards. These spaces became the living areas of all domestic architecture. The pavilions they came into being by multiplying very simple spatial units in modules consisting of four columns and a roof. If you can see all the pavilions, they have the columns and the roof over it is made up of pandu roof tiles. So sorry, it is made up of Kelu roof tiles, and it is locally manufactured there and being replaced nowadays being replaced by Mangalorean tiles from Gujarat. So, irrespective of the style and construction method, the essence is the same. Mandapas and baradaris are same outstanding example of spaces created to provide well articulated shelters for gathering or for pleasure. Pleasure pavilions known as baradari have an extremely sophisticated form in various architecture styles. The most important aspect of this kind of space is that it offers a simultaneous experience of the inside and outside. The essence of the spatial unit lies in its modular character and therefore in its potential for multiplication in contiguity and independent units organized in a certain proximity. It is a built space yet open, with many activities that can be done in that space. So it defines and yet extends boundary and can exist by itself or be part of a group. Despite regional and temporal variation, the power of its manifestation has remained unaffected. It conveys the idea of shelter but does not enclose. It is built and open to the courtyard and has a presence, yet it is transparent and ethereal. So, climatic response, it is clear that such open shelters serve best during summer evenings in arid regions or even in the warm humid regions, allowing a free flow of fresh air. Orientation of these, coming on to the arid system of planning, was always followed regardless of the site or building type. The arid was made flexible enough to accommodate any site condition and topography. Grid system is more sustainable in terms of economy and speed of construction. So it's a viable option and it's a very easy thing for the people of Demili to construct these houses. The construction workers who construct these houses are hired from outside and they come in the village and perform their task. And one dwelling takes around about 3 months to get ready. So it the grid was not always simultaneously or simple complex geometry, and curvilinear grids are also adopted as you can see in the dwelling number 2. So it is it is not as same as dwelling number 1, but it is similar to it. So in the dwelling number 1, the um, cattle shed is outside and it is segregated. So in dwelling number 2, cattle shed is inside the courtyard. So um, these complex geometry and curvilinear grids were also adopted. So central courtyard is the lung space, or you can say the courtyard is the lung space of either the house or the housing block. Just to ensure there's a courtyard in every house. The center of the house is never built up and is called the Brahmasthana, the genius loci of the house. So, again, that is the control of heating in the houses in the traditional architecture um, is done by the texture and the surfaces also. The heat inside the building is controlled by the use of textures. This is organized by three levels. At the town scale, the buildings are of unequal height with parapets and high walls, creating uneven sky and desired shading of each other. Secondly, the building facades have large number of projections. So here you can see the streets are narrow and the facades are typically plastered in mud, inside of which are stone wall, and when in evening, when ambient conditions are cool, the increased surface area helps in cooling it faster. However, an extended surface will warm up faster than a plain surface under winter conditions due to lower solar altitude. Therefore, the location and context of these surface is very important. The building is always oriented by the cardinal direction north, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, southeast, and southwest. So each of these direction is considered as energy by itself. Hence, the spaces in different orientations are considered differently for this design purpose, which is a very climate sensitive approach. So basically, the placement of the building within the site is the first step toward forming the grid of internal planning. The center of the plot is generally not where the center of the building is placed, only exception being temples. So climatic logic behind this is that in the house the outdoor and indoor is designed as one. So indoor has a courtyard and outdoor has a narrow street which is way cooler than the bigger streets. So the livelihood of the community gets does not has an adaptability and a wisdom approach. So if you can see the kitchen shown here is they are using traditional chula made out of mud, and they don't use kerosene oil or any gas provided by the government. So they only rely on the natural materials. They use wood for making their food, and the whole kitchen is made out of mud plaster. So they rear their cattle in the morning and the evening. So and they extract ingredients for their food from the uh, nearby farming lands, and and they decorate their houses with all the naturally available materials or colors, such as pandu is one of them, which is white in color. No, it is similar as mud found in brown color. So another one is gerua. Gerua is reddish in color. So they use it for their decoration purposes. And moreover, coming on to the way forward, due to a well-preserved historical built environment, there is a significant tourist potential in this village. Increase in tourism will lead to employment generation in the community, introduction of programs connected with the traditional way of life, recovery and reuse of homes which are not well maintained and are abandoned from a long time. They can be seriously converted into the homestays for the tourists visiting the village if the tourism factor increases. Provide guidelines to reduce to a minimum impact of supply systems on traditional buildings. Government bodies needs to revise restoration methodologies taking into account local customs and usages. Moreover, the only problem they are facing is that they don't have any land papers or land holdings. So their whole land is in the name of their lord deity Shri Dev Narayan Ji, on whom they live. They have left every thing on their deity only. So they believe in their deity, but they still face a problem when they have to take housing loans and everything. So they don't have anything to put in return of the loan. So these things needs to be taken care of, needs to be then there is a method that should be there should be a method devised for these issues they have. And moreover, the everyday dwellings needs of the inhabitants are a major problem in the conservation of vernacular dwellings. As time passes, there have been various modifications to the buildings. The vernacular buildings should be protected and restored as individual buildings or complexes of buildings, as they are the essence of the historic and cultural identity of the region and an addition to the wonderful natural scenery. Coming on to the last slide, this is the survey I did, and I you can see me with with Bhopa ji, and this is his house, all plastered in mud floor, and sitting space also he has made. You can see the entrance, and one more thing, that is the whole village believes that their fate is totally in the hand of Sri Dev Narayan ji, and I could also feel the power of the deity there. This is one of the experiences that I had in past 1 month, and I'm thankful to Heritage for All, which made me do this case study, and that's it. So thank you so much, and bye.